Hey guys, welcome back. Behavior Strategies for Class here. This is the podcast that helps you create calmer classrooms, stronger connections, and more confident learners. And today we're going to be answering one of the most common questions about what really works with students that have ADHD. Now, I know most of you have felt like you're repeating directions 100 times, you're juggling impulsivity and trying to get a student engaged while also managing the rest of your class. You are not alone. And just to remember, ADHD isn't a discipline issue. It's a brain-based difference in attention, regulation, and executive functioning. So today we're going to talk about 10 strategies that you can use to help your students who have ADHD and get them going the best that they can and their best learners. And you can start using these strategies right away. So listen in, guys. Welcome to Behavior Strategies for Class. I am Diane Bachman, your behavior paraprofessional with over 15 years of experience working in special education. And I'm so glad you're here because I'll be teaching you about social emotional learning, behavior strategies, trauma-informed care, and more. So if you are tired of being frustrated and not knowing what to do with your students who have challenging and disruptive behavior, you're in the right place. Now, if you're ready to become more equipped to help your students learn and grow, let's listen in to today's episode. Before we get started, as always, hit that subscribe button. Share this podcast, this episode with other educators that you know so we can continue to learn and grow together. Also, don't forget to grab your Trauma-Informed Behavior Micro Interventions Toolkit. It is only $10. The link is in the show notes. And this is going to give you quick, calming responses for those classroom moments when your students are beginning to escalate. These are some proactive strategies that you can use to build your confidence in dealing with your students struggling, challenging behaviors. So check the show notes for that link. So we're going to go over 10 strategies, like I said. And the first one to help your students with ADHD is establishing clear routines and predictable structure. Right? Students with ADHD, they thrive when they know exactly what to expect. What is coming next? What do they have to do? It reduces their anxiety. It helps support their executive function deficits, and it keeps them anchored. Right? That daily structure and posted expectations, it really boosts their focus and helps to reduce some of their behavior issues. Because ultimately, their brains benefit from highly organized environments and clear routines that act like a roadmap for their day. So I know a lot of teachers, and I've said this before, they post it in their classroom, the schedule for the day. In the morning, they'll go over if there is a change to that schedule and those routines to remind kids okay, this is going to be a little off day, but this is what we're doing. And then giving them prep even before that transition or that different schedule routine happens, because we all know there are times when routines and schedules get thrown off. No control, right? Sometimes you have no control over that. Things just happen in the school and, classes have to shift. And so, but being able to prep your students ahead of time as much as you can really helps in that transition. So as much as possible, keep those clear routines and predictable structure in place, and that will help your student stay organized, feel anchored, and reduce some of those behavior issues. Number 2 kind of goes along with that, in that you give clear, concise, step-by-step instructions. ADHD impacts their working memory and their multi-step sequencing. So they benefit from having simple, brief instructions and visual supports to avoid that overwhelm. Because executive functioning delays especially affects remembering those instructions and those tasks. And usually that's 30% behind their peers. So if there's any way to visually show like what needs to be done, that will be super helpful to your students with ADHD, because I know, right, in like 2 seconds, they're going to be like, wait, what? What do you want me to do? Wait, what? What's first? Wait, what? And of course, that helps to ease the frustration on your end as well. So I've seen some teachers, during math, whatever subject it is, they will write on the board, okay, first this sheet, then, when that's done, work on this worksheet. When that's done, read a book or whatever it is. And they have it posted on the board so that, when that student is working on that worksheet and now they're just about done and they're like, wait, what do I do next? All you have to do is point to the board. So you're not constantly reminding them, or they're having to ask their peers, and now they're, kind of getting disrupted, and now everyone is like discombobulated because they're not really sure, they've got distracted, and so, right, then this just amps up the stress and frustration on your part as well as for them. So I really encourage you to use those visuals, any visuals, as much as possible. I've seen other teachers use like those student whiteboards and just write it on there, maybe just specifically for that student. Maybe you just have a couple kids that struggle with that, and maybe you just want to do it just for those kids. There's lots of different ways that you can use visuals. When I've worked with some of our students that have other disabilities, we have, they call them PECs, but they're like little pictures of what need to be done. So it could be as much as like, get your pencil, paper, write, put in the basket, get the book, a book to read, or whatever it is. And it has all of those exact visuals. And so usually as the para, we would set that up and show them, okay, this is what you're doing now. And we could just point to what the visual is. So we also are not constantly verbally, saying the directions over and over again. We could just point to their schedule per se on their desk, and they see it there. But like I said, you could write it on the board. You could use the little whiteboard, student whiteboards, and just jot it down real quick. You could even have other students jot it down real quick and have it in front of, some of your other students who have ADHD or who have trouble remembering the directions. It's really a simple fix, and I know sometimes teachers kind of push back on that, but I really think it is such a good help, not only for you, also for your students, so that you both are not getting frustrated and overwhelmed about what needs to happen. And then you can always double check with them once you have given directions, because sometimes I've seen that as well. You will give the directions, you'll give the instructions, and then I've seen teachers go back to a couple of different students and be like, okay, did you understand what I just said, or the directions that you need to do? And then sometimes they'll ask, okay, repeat back to me what it is you need to do. And for the most part, they can repeat back. So that's another way to help them to remember what they need to do and what those steps are. Number 3, if there's any way to break work down into small, manageable chunks, right? Because large tasks can trigger frustration and avoidance, right? That's that overwhelm that can cause the anxiety. So breaking those assignments into steps with checklists increase task completion and attention. So that helps that task modification. So you're breaking that work down into small steps and maybe sometimes breaks in between. We've had some students where we work like 15 minutes at a time and then they get like 2 minutes of a break, and then 15 minutes at a time and then 2 minutes of break. It just depends on your student and what their needs are and where their struggles are on how much you break that down. But task modification is a well-supported behavioral intervention in many school settings. So again, that could be on a student whiteboard, and say they're starting to write an essay and you need them to write 3 paragraphs about frogs and why they like frogs. So, you're giving the overall directions for the whole class, and all they are hearing is like, oh my gosh, I have to write 3 paragraphs about frogs. I'm not even really sure what I'm supposed to write. And so they just sit down and they melt down, or they want to leave, or they, start causing distractions and doing other things that they shouldn't be doing. So being able to write a checklist and be like, okay, what's one thing you know about frogs? And write it down. And what do frogs eat? Write that down. What do frogs, where do they sleep? And write that down. So just little bits and pieces really helps them take time to focus on that one thing at a time and get it done. Number 4, use positive reinforcements frequently and specifically. Now, this doesn't have to be a huge big deal, but ADHD brains are more responsive to immediate, meaningful reinforcement. So even if it's like, Johnny, thank you so much. Good job getting out your pencil and your paper. Like, you are ready to go, ready to learn. That's a great job. Good job turning on your computer, getting to the right app in the right place you need to be, and you are ready to learn. Thank you so much for turning in your paper on time with your nice, neat writing. You did a great job. I know sometimes it feels like we constantly have to give the positive reinforcement. Like I've heard teachers say, they should just be doing it right because it's the right thing to do and they're just following directions. I get that. But if you could spread a little encouragement, why not? It really does not take a lot of your time to just encourage somebody and just notice that they were doing the right thing at the right time. Because specific praise and reward systems reinforce that desired behavior and boost their self-esteem. So I've seen so many teachers do this. Like when you say, okay, it's time to line up, we got to go to lunch, everybody over here. And you have like 4 or 5 stragglers who are not doing what they're supposed to. The teachers are acknowledging those who are doing what's right? So you're focusing on that positive behavior that you are wanting to see. And you're telling, Susie, you look great, lined up, ready to go. I see you have your lunch. Thanks for following directions. Adam, that's a great job lining up too, being quiet, ready to go. So you're constantly reinforcing that positive behavior. And then, the next thing you know, these kiddos over here who didn't follow directions right away, they're jumping in line. They're grabbing their stuff, they're jumping in line. And you don't even really have to redirect them because they hear the positivity that you're giving those students who are doing the right thing. So I encourage you to do that specific, frequent, positive reinforcement, because really that aligns with neurological research showing ADHD brains respond strongly to rewards. Number 5, minimize environmental distractions as much as possible, right? The classroom environment plays a major role in behavior success. Seating away from distractions as much as possible, decluttered spaces, quieter areas reduce sensory overload. And remember that environmental modifications like proximity seating, quiet work spots are core evidence-based strategies. And I've talked about this before where some teachers have like half of their lights on. Like they just have a calmer atmosphere when you walk into their room. You're not kind of blinded by these overhead lights that are on the whole time. Most classrooms have a quiet space, either in the corner, in the back of the room, where students can go. One of our teachers has an area that's their Zen area, and they can just sit there and chill for, I don't know, however long. I'm not sure how long those minutes are, but it's their Zen area. So they know they can go and just chill for a minute. So what kind of space have you created in your classroom, and have, done your best to minimize those distractions? Like we've had some students, like they're constantly, wanting to look out the door, or wanting to look out the window, or wanting to do this or that. Well, for the most part, right, you can't move the windows and you can't move the doors, but you can move the student who is not so easily distracted away from the door and maybe not facing the window, right? Just little things, little tweaks here and there can really make a big difference for your students. And number 6, this also goes along where allow movement and flexible seating. Movement needs are neurological, not really willful behavior. Flexible seating increases attention and reduces disruptive movement. So that's using those wobble stools, a standing desk, floor cushions. There's seat cushions that students can use that, are flexible and can move around. Having, I think they're TheraBands that go around students' chairs, and kids can like kick it and just kind of mess with it. It's a movement. Because ADHD specific classroom adaptations emphasize flexibility and individual support. So sometimes if that student needs to get up and just walk to the back of the room, if you're able to let that happen, I think that's great. Other students, they like to stand a lot during doing their work. I've seen some teachers are like, nope, you got to sit down. Nope, you got to sit down. And other teachers are like, okay, if you're doing your work, then stand. Yeah, that's fine. You stand there and do your work. And so usually they will put those students like a little bit further in the back of the room, which is fine. They have a little more space. They're not really distracting or standing in front of somebody. But now they have just a little flexibility to be able to stand and do their work. We have a few of our students who love movement breaks. And so they will stand for a few. They'll kind of walk a little bit around their desk. Then they'll sit down for a few. Then they'll get up and but the whole time they are still doing their work. They may not necessarily be like answering the questions that you give, but if you do ask them a question, they know the answer. They are engaged, even though it looks like they're not. Really, a lot of them are, that I know, that I have worked with, who can pace the back of the room, who can play with a fidget, who can, sit on that wobble stool, and you ask them a question about what you just said, and they will tell you. Or if you just gave directions on what they need to do, they will tell you what it is. So just understand that is all part of it. It's neurological. So number 7, implement behavior plans built on contingency management. So I know this would be for your kiddos that have IEPs, because behavior change is most effective with consistent contingencies. So they need to know that there is consequence, positive or negative. They need to know, and there's consistency, right? Because evidence supports multi-component interventions. So that positive reinforcement system, that goal setting, that structured feedback that is constantly given to them. Because functional behavior analysis and contingency-based systems improve attention and task engagement. Because who doesn't want a buy-in, right? And again, I know students should be doing their work because they're students and that's what they're supposed to be doing when they're in school. However, some of your kiddos need the extra support, need the extra reinforcement. So what does that look like for your students? Does it look like they have a behavior chart and they're working on a behavior goal, and if they make their goal for that day, they get a little prize at the end of the day? Or are they working towards a goal for the week, the end of the week, to get like an extra recess or maybe lunch with their teacher? What does that look like? Giving them something to work towards. Number 8, strengthen organization and those executive functioning skills, because these skills are often the root of the problems. They need that organizational training to improve task engagement and academic functioning, because a lot of these students function several years behind their peers in executive functioning skills. They need added support to help reduce frustration and those behavior spikes. And you've seen a lot of your students, like you look in their desk and it's a hot mess. And they're saying, well, I can't find my math book. It's like, oh, dude, how do you find anything in here? And so it's taking it all out, right? Helping them stack it through, finding whatever papers that's in there that they didn't turn in. Where do all their pencils go? Putting that back in their pencil pouch or a, plastic container. Putting all their books on one side of their desk, and the other side, their binder goes in there. And workbooks. I don't know, whatever it looks like for you. We assume students know how to, clean out their desk or how to organize their desk, and they really don't. A lot of them probably still don't even clean up their own rooms. Parents still do that, or whoever they're living with may still do that. Like they just don't know, right? They were just never taught. So being able to take time to teach them and not get frustrated and upset about it, but just know that, okay, this is a skill that they're lacking. Let me help them. Let me teach them. Or if you have another student who does a great job at that, have them come over, look at their desk and say, hey, look and see their desk. Now let's come back here and let's work on your desk so that you're organized and you can see, what's in your desk. And then if there's something you need to grab, you know where to go grab it, right? Just teaching them those skills. Number 9, use task-specific short-term interventions. So research shows targeted short-term strategies outperform long-term ones in school settings. So teaching them, okay, in your frustration, what do you need to do? If you get mad right now, what do you need to do? Okay, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Okay, let's take deep breaths. And these are all short things that they can do even just at their desk. Or they like to draw. Drawing helps to calm them. Okay, you have 2 minutes to draw. However, we have learned some of our students get pretty upset when they can't finish their drawing in that 2-minute window. So now they're upset again because they can't finish the picture. So if you are going to do one task that you know sometimes they're not going to be able to finish in that time frame, you need to preface that before they even begin. So I usually try and do this, especially one of our students loves to color and draw. And it's like, okay, you have, like I said, 2 minutes to work on this. When the timer's done, if you are not finished with that, we can work on it at your next break. And so just letting them know, you got to preface it so they are prepared. So that's just another reminder what the expectation is. So when that timer goes off and your picture is not done, what are you going to do? And of course, sometimes they're like, well, I'm going to keep drawing. Okay, no, sorry. Let's try again. And just getting them to say and recognize, like, okay, this is the expectation. My job is to follow through. And so we remind them. So letting them know, what does that look like? Sometimes, if a student was aggressive, maybe at lunch that day, usually the afternoon recess is usually an indoor recess, or maybe sometimes they're in the principal's office, whatever it is, there's that immediate short-term consequence. I have been in some schools where they're like, well, no, now it's tomorrow, and we need to remind them again, like, this is because of yesterday. Or I've heard, like, sometimes it's like, okay, well, last week you did this, so now you have to do that. Well, no. Like, the kids are not going to remember, and that takes away that lesson of the consequence of the behavior at that time. Right? They need to know at that time whatever the consequence is for that behavior. We have to have that short-term consequence, the short-term intervention. Okay, you're shutting down during math. Okay, we're coming in and we're going to help you finish that math, and let's do this together. Okay, you need help writing. We're going to do this together. Let's do your writing. Let's start, the first sentence. What's your first sentence? Instead of like, I have to write, like I said, the 3 paragraphs and they're overwhelmed. You're like, dude, let's start on the first sentence. What's our first sentence going to be? Like, I get it. This is what we'll end up there. But right now, what can we do right now? And then number 10, build strong collaboration with the families as much as possible. Right? Trying to keep that consistency across all environments really does help in having better behavior outcomes. Because when you at the school and the families can reinforce consistency, it helps to reduce those behavior flare-ups. Because parents know now what's going on in class and where they're struggling, and they can help them as well at home and just kind of reinforce what you're teaching as well at school. Because interventions involving family and collaboration with the schools enhances that social, attention, and emotional regulation for your students. So getting as much support and encouragement around that student will give them positive outcomes. So guys, I hope and pray that these strategies for your students with ADHD will help you and help release some of that stress and tension in you as well as your students, and take away some of that angst and anxiousness and flare up of behaviors because they're frustrated, they're overwhelmed, but now you have some other tools to help you. So a quick recap. Number 1, establish those clear routines and predictable structure. Number 2, give clear, concise, step-by-step instructions. Number 3, break work into small, manageable chunks. Number 4, use positive enforcement frequently and specifically. Number 5, as much as possible, minimize environmental distractions. Number 6, allow movement and flexible seating. Number 7, implement behavior plans built on contingency management. Consistency is everything. Number 8, strengthen organization and those executive functioning skills. Remember, those may need to be taught. Number 9, use task-specific short-term interventions. If it's moving seats, moving kids around that student, whatever it is, there's short-term interventions that make a big difference. And number 10, as much as possible, build that strong collaboration with families around your students. I hope these were helpful, and I encourage you, which one are you going to work on this week with your students who have ADHD? Because I know you want all of your students to be successful. You want all of your students to feel included, like they belong, and they can succeed to the best of their ability. And I know that you are their best cheerleader. So thank you so much again for listening. Drop me a note, leave a review. Which of these strategies are you using and have been beneficial for your students? I would love to hear from you. And also, don't forget, check the show notes. Get your trauma-informed behavior micro intervention toolkit so that you can have quick calming responses for your students with challenging behaviors. It's only $10, guys. You got this. Thanks so much, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate your support. And if I have encouraged you, motivated you to continue to learn, to support your students, even better, to help them strive in your classroom, please leave a review, hit that subscribe button so that others can see they can learn and grow here as well. Thank you.